Solar Class 101. Leanne, you good? Yeah? He's laughing at us. So we look funny. There is a delay, so everybody online, you're about 15, 20 seconds behind what we're saying. So this is where Solar Wholesale. My name is Kenny Hodges with Red Sun.
And I'm Jeremy Eastwood, and General Manager here at Solar Wholesale.
So I've been doing solar 100%.
It says we have one.
11 years now, 12 years. That means that I've either ran an operation or run crews for the last 12 years. I've installed a little over 2,000 projects. We have some large, all the way from small scale of 1, 2 panels and some connexes, all the way to 300, 400, 500 panels. We have about 4 to 5 going on right now. We have this building here. We're going to put 300 kW on this, 520, 500 something.
550 panels.
Yeah, and they're 550 watts, massive panels. So all the way from DC 12-volt systems to 48-volt systems on batteries, all the way up from then your 120-volt 40 to 3-phase system. So if you have a question, if I don't know the answer, I can find it pretty quick. A lot of things I've memorized, conduit sizing or wire sizing, I double check, but I know everything on res pretty back of the hand. We were doing 5 to 10 projects a week. You good?
Your audio, your mics are blinking.
Oh, let's reset that. They probably lost the Bluetooth connection as well. Oh, probably didn't reset it. But you might want to unplug that mic and then plug it back in. Have a customer asking when they can get back on. Refresh the page. There, we're good now. I'm good. You good? Yep. Okay.
How do we sound? I guess
Will you let them know in the chat? Show in the chat if you can't hear us. We will yell louder. Okay. Yep. We got the thumbs up. All right, guys. So that's kind of my background in history. I'm NABCEP certified, which is the highest certification you can get for solar PV installations and technology information. So that's just a national accreditation. That means I can go pretty much anywhere and instruct you. Like if I go out to Louisiana or to Tennessee, I shouldn't do tools unless I'm contractor licensed in that area, but I can go out there and tell you how to do it. So if you get to a point you're stuck, they shipped me out to Ohio last year.
Yep.
This time, I think it was last year. Went out there and helped a guy finish his install, get his batteries up and running. We had some technical issues, some upgrades and some firmware stuff, but I'm certified in Solar Edge, Enphase,
AP
systems, Home Grid,
Solar.
of all the major manufacturers. So anything you buy from here, I'm certified in, or there's somebody that I know that knows more than me. So yeah, Jeremy's a little over 2 years now.
Yep, just a little over 2 years. Came from the automotive industry. Wanted to switch it up. I liked my weekends, so this has been nice working a
9 to 5
really? job. Been really good. I've loved Solar Wholesale. It's been a new experience for me learning everything about it, but we've come a long way. We have a great team here, some very experienced energy consultants, a mastermind in the warehouse when it comes to equipment. We don't know all the answers right away because each DIY kit that we sell is very specific to your project, but we do have that knowledge base where we can team together and get you the answers that you need. And that's what we do strive on as our, teamwork inside of the office. We have dedicated project managers. We have, like I said, the energy consultants. We have a warehouse team. We even have customer care, who's Stacy, that checked you guys in. So she handles any issues that you guys have. If you're not getting the answers directly from us, she's that representation for you guys. Yeah, really good.
So how many of you guys are looking for a grid-tied system? You live in a residential property. You already have permanent power from Rocky Mountain Power or from, who's in Colorado? Loveland. So Loveland Electric, or you're in Springville, it has their own power company, or Murray has their own power, or Provo. Are you guys all looking at grid-tied systems, or who's looking at off-grid systems? Yeah, okay, perfect. So we got a little mix of both. We know both systems. So they both have their advantages and disadvantages. And knowing, how much power you can pull from an off-grid system at any given time depends on your inverter and the sun and all those fun things. So I wanted to give you a little bit of personal experience, like why solar and why I chose solar. I kind of fell into it as a construction manager with a big company in Utah County, helped them launch their Utah division, and we were running, 25, 30 jobs a week back in 14, 15, 16 timeframe when solar really hit the Utah market. Um, since then, I've had an opportunity to travel to 4 different countries or 4 different continents and build solar or consult solar from Africa, Europe. I've been in Hawaii, Mexico, all over the state, about 18 states. I counted up last night. I kind of was like, how many states have I been in and actually did projects? So 18 states in the continental US. Yet to been to Alaska or Canada, but those are both in the workings this year, I think, on a couple projects. So I not only consult with Solar Wholesale, but I consult for AP Systems and Solarc and train on some of their systems. We also go out to California and do lots of training. So I do lots of installer training. So in helping homeowners do that is pretty easy. So that's my personal experience of why I love solar. I have it on my personal property. My power bill is a little over $10 a month. My wife came to me and goes, our power bill was high. I'm like, well, how high? It was 18. It's like, okay, that's not, yeah, it's nothing. So I spend about $120 to $200 every year on power from Rocky Mountain Power. So that's nothing compared to what we used to pay before solar. Anywhere from like your bills from $150 to $200-300 in the summertime. My wife likes the Arctic Circle in our house and the summertime, so 64 degrees is where that thermostat's at. And so every so often we have a $20 or $30 power bill, usually when company's over during the summer or Christmas time. We've got our lights on and we got that extra stuff going through our house. But that's kind of where I'm at. Why Solar Wholesale? So Solar Wholesale is set apart a little different. There are other DIY companies out there, right? If you've done your research, you know that. They will actually customize your plan set to your property off your specific measurements. They will do it. It's fairly quick, 24, 48 hours from the time that implementation starts. They can have a kit out within a week or two if that's the quickest process you want. They help you with your net metering agreements. They help you with answer questions. And if they don't know the answer, guess what? I get an email and then we get the answer and then ship it back to you. So they have this product in stock. It's ready to go. Everything.
I mean, another thing too, just so you guys know, is there's so much product available. It can be overwhelming to understand, which inverters, which rail system, which panels do I use. And so our mentality is not your typical solar company, right? We don't try to just sell you what we can. What we've done is the research to say what's going to be the easiest rail system for a DIYer who has to do this one time, right? Teddy, who's an installer, right? He may come and say, oh, I prefer this one. And well, he's done that system 100 times, 200 times. And maybe the first time it's the hardest, but the 10th time it might be a lot easier. So our mentality is not your standard solar company. We look at it as if I had to do this job one time, what's going to be the simplest, the easiest, most effective way for a homeowner to do that? For those reasons, we have selected, we've partnered with AP Systems, we've partnered with Snap and Rack, these companies who make it as easy as possible for the DIYer who's going to do it once, maybe twice in their lifetime. And we have other options as well. We can get whatever you need, but from our experience in getting those customized kits for homeowners, one, we're not as experienced in it, but two, neither are they. And so the troubles tend to arise more than if we just say, hey, this is going to be your best option, your best support. We've done the research for you so you don't have to. And that's where our experience and the project managers and everything that we offer can really come into play.
And it's not just on the front end, it's on the back end too, right? The service, the warranty. Somebody's going to answer that phone at AP Systems when I call them, or hey, this company knows AP Systems. I'm having an issue with XYZ. We can say, okay, did you do these steps? Because they're super familiar with it. If we get an off product, like I'm working on one that's a Magnum from 20 years ago, we get an off product, I've got to do more research and more knowledge again and be like, oh, that's compatible with that, but that's not good. So I have to figure out that, and it's a little tougher. So Solar Wholesale is great. And then why Red Sun? If any of you guys get to the point where it's like, okay, I've got the electrical, I'm an electrical engineer, I can do all this stuff on the ground, I don't want to get on my roof. Well, I've got 3 great guys that love to get on roofs. So, or vice versa. You're like, hey, I can get the roof part done, ABC, click together. It's all plug and play up there. But I'm kind of scared to open my panel. I don't want to get in there. I don't know if I want to mess something up or XYZ, right? So those are kind of things where you can buy the system. You can purchase installation help. You can do consultant help. Hey, I just want somebody to come and review, inspect my system before the inspector comes so I don't have to get hung up by the city. Or I want to make sure my labels are right or my voltage is right, that kind of stuff. So all of it's kind of a piece, a la carte sort of thing together. And so that's kind of why Red Sun. Also, I offer financing. So if you need that help to carry a loan or to make the purchase up front, I have financing that I can do that, and through my portal, we can actually get you a decent cost if you wanted to go solar like tomorrow and you didn't have 15, 20, 30, 40,000, whatever your system size is, how many batteries you want, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of why Red Sun.
Yeah.
So
same with us. We have obviously those financing options. Yeah, just reach out to us. But I think we're ready to start diving into the class, aren't you
I
guys?
think so too. Yeah. So a couple of you guys have solar. You've done your solar DIY. How hard is it?
It wasn't hard. It took a lot of research and learning, just like we're trying to do.
Yeah. So the actual physicality of it it's probably the easiest construction other than standing on a pitched roof in the middle of the elements and weather. So pick a good day, invite some neighbors over, that kind of stuff, right? Trusted individuals if you're going to do that. The hardest part is getting that sheet of plywood panel that weighs 45, 55 pounds up to the roof and secured and on the roof and square and plumb. That's probably one of the hardest parts. But let's start with basics 101. What's the first rule?
Safety.
Safety.
Always safety.
So we have PPE, right? Anytime you're up on an elevated space over 6 feet, you should be tied off or secured, right? When you first get up there on the ladder, I've got an OSHA 30-hour certificate. So if I get up there and get in trouble, I get in trouble because I know better, right? But if you guys get up there, we want you to make sure you're safe. How many guys feel safe on your roof, putting up Christmas lights, cleaning the gutters, or you do it from the ground? You can pretty feel agile, right? But once you get complacent up there 2-3 hours, if you get complacent or you forget to look before you step back or whatnot, you got to make sure you got a harness, safety harness. It's attached in there properly. Take the extra time to do that.
And that's what I was going to show you guys here. This little
Safety in a
kit you can
bucket.
get at your any basic hardware store. This one we purchased from Home Depot. It's about 130 bucks. It comes with a harness. It comes with your roof truss and then about a 75-foot rope. And all it takes is for you to just screw it in. Your kits come with a roof sealant, so you just back your screws out when you're done, fill it up. It's like you were never there. Strongly recommend this. It makes it so safe. And the harnesses actually aren't too bad. It makes it so you can do it by yourself. Just latch in, step up, climb up your ladder. Highly recommend doing something like this for your personal roofs because it as a DIYer, you don't realize how much of a sell a solar panel is until you're 20 feet up in the air on a ladder trying to hold it and that little breeze catches you. Yeah, go ahead.
That's
This?
a safety in a bucket.
Yeah, safety in a
Yeah,
bucket.
so that's just a harness, a rope, a attachment. It's about $99.
Yeah.
So everybody online, and here we're not sponsored by anybody. They're not Home Depot, Milwaukee, any name we say is just personal tools, personal products we bought.
Yep.
So
But yeah, this one, great little kit. You can even get it. I'm 99% sure you can even get it off of Amazon.
Amazon,
right?
yeah.
But yeah, just a simple little harness that's comfortable, adjustable. Instructions are pretty easy. But yeah, I definitely recommend it. I even used this year for my Christmas lights. Once I'd done it, I'm like, you know what? It's not that bad. I'll just throw it on. I got a sketchy place,
So other PPE or knee pads, I'm getting old. I put knee pads on. I work in knee pads every day, all day long. Gloves, save your hands. Earplugs, you'll need those. Cutting this rail, it's very loud, screeching. And then safety glasses. Can't tell you how many times I've smacked myself in the eye with a tool, shavings, metal, even wrenching down or doing sockets. Anything break or shatter, it's good to have safety glasses, and they could be sunglasses or whatever, but as long as they're rated. So those are a couple of the safety products.
Yeah.
At any point in time, you don't feel safe or secure, stop what you're doing, get down, right? Make sure your tools are in proper working order. Your saw blades are good, they're latched in, that kind of stuff. But yeah,
Yep.
So
the next step, once you consider all your safety, this is a key factor that gets skipped over quite often in the industry, and it's the site survey. As DIYers, it is extremely important to get accurate measurements for a site survey. your whole system and the entire project is based off of your measurements. We pay for programs to get us accurate measurements for you. However, they have a variance of about 6 inches. Well, 6 inches can cost you 1 to 6 panels depending upon where it is. So when you're doing your site surveys, we do have site survey videos to help on YouTube, but getting up there and getting exact measurements, the whole dimension of the roof, where the obstructions are, how far to give us references, allow us to move the panels as close as we can, and then getting distances from where you would ideally in your head, we want to walk this through with you, punching out through an eave box, and how far down is it to your combiner panel that you'll be tapping into, right? All these things come into play, so we make sure that you get all the right materials needed, enough materials. Dave's really good. We always send a little bit excess, but site survey is the key. It will save us so much time if you took that extra 15 minutes to get clear, precise pictures of your roof trusses inside. Like I said, of the actual roof measurements, getting the angles that we need to get your meter box, all of that. But there's more details, and I'll let Teddy kind of talk about that.
So who knows what he talked about a word called obstructions. Yep. Who knows what an obstruction is? Anybody? So any pipe or vent that comes out of your roof. So this is a beautiful array, right? You've all seen the beautiful arrays. And then all of a sudden in the middle, there's one panel missing and there's stupid little pipe right there, right? That's an obstruction. We need to know where those pipes are. And we need, because we can only have certain proximity, but if it's in the middle of your roof, you're going to have a whole panel gone. But if it's up on the edge, we can slide it down or left or right, or you have the turtle box vents on one side. So we want to make sure we know where those are. A lot of them we can see online, but having precise measurements gets you the best looking array. And solar's not that aesthetically pleasing unless it's done properly. And so it makes it look a lot better. So roof measurements are one big thing. The most critical thing on my point is this wall right here where your meter is. So it takes you steps. You're taking several photos, or 5 to 6 photos in this area. You're taking photos up close to the meter so I can read the meter ID number. It matches on your bill. I have to submit that for my paperwork. We need to see what's in here, how we're going to interconnect. Interconnect is where this solar breaker is going to land in here. Newer houses, newer systems, anything built over 1990, it's pretty easy to get into. Anything pre-90s, we may have to change some things. You may need a meter upgrade. You may need to do a redirect, a breaker derate, a line side tap, load side tap, all those things you may need to change and adjust. We don't know that unless we have all those photos. So when you get into here, you'll be taking a photo from up close to 10 feet back, dead front on and off. Who knows what a dead front is? So dead front is this plate right here, that metal plate that keeps everything. I can touch it. There's no power to it. That's why it's called dead, and it's in the front of your box. There's one that goes here, and then this door actually acts here as a dead front. But this will just pop out, and then you can see all the wires. So that's, but on your dead front, it will tell me, you'll take a photo of that anyways, or the sticker on this main panel here, because that gives me all the technical information of what this is rated at. Everything's amp rated, everything's volt rated, so we need to make sure that all of the numbers add up. So those are a couple great things. We do a full 360 of the house, so we know where power lines are, if they're overhead power lines. We know where the obstructions are, where the access points are, where everything's positioned on your lot, because they do, just like a plan set, if you ever built something, it's a 7-8 page plan set. Yep. Overhead view, detailed view, rafter view, structural engineering, all that, right? And again, if your house is built after the 90s, you usually have manufactured trusses. It's really easy to get a structural letter because they're pre-manufactured. We're only adding about 3 pounds per square foot. If you've got a pre-1990 house and you've got handmade trusses or rafters or beams or anything like that, it's a little bit more tricky, but most of the time it's built properly where we can do that. Also, we get good photos of the age of your roof, the type of your roof. This is an asphalt shingle roof. This is architectural shingles. Then you have your underlayment, your OSB, and then your trusses. These are on 2-foot center. 2-foot center is pretty standard. This kind of gives you guys a visual reference of if you've never done construction or never been in the field, you know what's under there, right? When we first started solar in Utah, there's not a lot of solar guys. I hired roofers. I hired framers because they knew what was underneath. Learning how to do the erector set on top was pretty easy. We'll talk about drilling and penetrations later, but I think that's about it on your site survey.
Yep.
Or then we have permitting. So if we get all the measurements, get all the photos,
And on the permitting though too, if you're going off grid, it's not required 100% of the time. Check with your local AHJ. You might hear that reference. That's authority having jurisdiction, usually your city or your utility company. But some do require. However, if you are off grid, there's no need to tie into the grid. It's just like building a small little shed in your backyard. Probably don't need to permit it, but always check.
question.
I keep asking questions.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. If you have space, would you recommend ground-mounted panels, or do you always recommend elevated?
Good question. So if you don't want to attach it to your house and you have land or space, a ground mount is a great option. I would love a ground mount. I don't have the space, so I went on roof, right? Ground mount's good for a couple things. Service. I don't have to stand on a roof. I can change stuff out very quickly. I can clean them really quickly. Snow, dirt, debris, whatever, I can clean them.
You also get to set the right. You get to determine the pitch, right?
You
so
pick
you
the
get
tilt, the angle, the pitch, everything, so you can optimize your system. The only disadvantage is you have to build a structure. You have to build the framework, and it does cost. And then you have to trench, and I don't like trenching. But if you've got the space and you've got a trencher, you got some young kids, or you have a machine, a ground mount is a great option.
Just making sure that there wasn't any reason not to go ground.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Are there any safety concerns with, a ground mount system and kids running around?
Yeah, so there's NEC code, which is National Electric Code. There's also your jurisdictional code or ordinances that you have to either fence it or net it. So you have to, if you look on the backside of this, no wires are hooked in yet from these panels because there's no sense, it's not outside. But all your panels and wires have to be up against the frame. So basically it's more for animals rather than children, right? We know better. Hey, kids, don't touch that. We still touch it hot one time, figure it out, right? But animals getting entangled and entrapped in it. So that's kind of those things. So either a netting or screen or a 4-foot fence around your solar panels. Good questions.
Yep.
So permitting, you get all that information, the data.
Yep.
They send it to a third party.
And so yeah, permitting. Usually they were going to require that what they call a CAD design or just your design, which is what we'll provide for you. That's from your site survey pictures, your meter box. We build out the system. It shows exactly how you're going to interconnect. The city wants to double check that we're not putting too much power into your main panel, that you're going to fry anything. They're going to check that the weight's there. So we have the engineering team get their certifications on there as well to make sure that your structure is sound. And if you have any questions, we're here to help. They do ask sometimes the more technical things, and that's where our team can come in. But permitting is more just to give you the okay. They can give specifics. For example, yeah, 1 second, and I'll get right to you. This building, we'll just use this. We're working on this one right now, and Rocky Mountain Power kicked it back to us about two or three times. We got it resolved. West Jordan is getting very technical into basically down to the actual nut that we're using to hook into this building. So everything, and so when we get kickbacks, it's not anything that you can prepare for, but we will get you the necessary information to get it to pass. So we have to get UL listings for a specific nut that's going into the combiner panel, right? And that's what's holding up this whole project. So the permitting, this is city folks that we're working with, so sometimes they can be a little more aggressive on what they're looking for than really needs to be, but we will make sure that that gets there. So if you use Solar Wholesale, and part of our kit is we give you a permit packet is what it's called, and it has 95% of the time everything that you need to just submit and then get those approvals. And so you don't have to worry about anything like that. Yeah. We've worked with, we're nationwide, so we've worked with, I would say probably 60% or more of all the utility companies throughout the United States. And we have a list and we know what each of them require. So we kind of get ahead of the curve before it gets too late. Yeah. We did have a quick question over here.
Yeah, it's the one that I was asking you about what are the rules. For example, we have and we love to be out of grid. Also, do you have an idea if they have the
Where do you live at in the county? You live in Provo. So unfortunately, if you live inside a municipality, you cannot be off grid. You have to be grid tied to the municipality power. You don't have to use their power, because if you put solar on your property and you offset 100%, you still have a connection fee. Guys, we're all old enough that we used to have a phone on the wall that we paid $40 for that nobody used, right?
Yeah.
So that's the same thing. You have that meter on your wall. You got to pay $10 for that meter, regardless if you use it or not. So if you feed enough power back into the grid and you pull back your credits and you're offset like I am, it's $10 to $12 a month is all. So, but yeah, if you live in a municipality, you cannot be off grid.
Are there costs associated with?
Yes. So that's one
Great
thing.
question.
Yeah,
Thank
it's a
you.
great question. So every city, every HJ has a different permit fee. Harriman, I just put one in. That's where I live. It's $117 for the permit review. Salt Lake County is like $220, depending on. There's some that are factored on how much it costs, how much the equipment is, what you're doing, how much square footage. They all have different fee
How large your
schedules.
system is.
Yep.
They have tiers. If you're under a certain tier, it's
It's X, and then yeah.
Yep.
So that's a great question. But yeah, there are permit fees. Anytime you want somebody to do something, especially on the government level, there's a fee, right? I can say that because I work for the government as well. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so you're fine. So you're not. So you cannot be in an habitable space or an occupied space with only variable power. Variable power is wind, water, solar. So you have to have a static power or permanent power to be occupied in your structure. So an outbuilding, a barn, a shed, a garage, an RV, those are not
just fine.
inhabitable structures. Sure, you can throw your kid in the shed and have them camp out there overnight, right? But you're not inhabiting that space.
Yeah.
So that's that rule there.
And I'll just drop this too. So for example, right now, this entire container, we have 6 450 watt panels outside that are charging this entire container right now. So after the show, we'll kind of do a quick tour, walk everyone in here. But we've got LED lights, and we'll show you with just what 6 panels does. We'll kind of show you some schematics. But you can run a microwave, an air fryer, a coffee machine, a TV. You can have all the lights running, a fan, and those 6 panels outside are charging this entire container.
And we don't even touch the battery in
We
there.
don't even touch
Yeah.
the battery. So really, the off-grid system for something like that, a few panels here and there in the day when you're out there working in it, it's an awesome idea, and we highly encourage it. It's
Yeah. You
really
could throw
beneficial.
a 12-volt system out in your barn,
Yep.
or a 120-volt system, plug in your chargers, plug in, like all my chargers are in equipment. I've got truck chargers, right? That go in the truck for 12-volt. I've got the plug-in pack that goes in the 120-volt. So all those are compatible.
Can you buy
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you
you
can
can
do
use those.
EcoFlow. You can do the home grid.
grid.
You can charge this car off of that. So we'll do that. So net meter agreement, or NEM, that's an agreement. That's a contractual agreement between you and your power company. We help with that. We help you process it. We make sure that the documents are right, the information's right. Rocky Mountain Power, it's super easy, online portal. Most of everything's done online now, even permitting. It's very, very, very clean. So
And with Solar Wholesale, with the permitting stages, just so you guys are aware, we do a 3-payment method. I'll just kind of go over that real quick. So to get started, a CAD design does cost a decent amount of money. So we do charge just a simple deposit fee, and that's going to cover your design and get you the paperwork that you need to make sure this is the system we like. Once from there, the next step is to get your system submitted to the city. And for that, it does require engineering. It does require us to do a lot more work. So we do a 50% payment up front, and then that money is tangible, meaning if you get denied any point going forward, we can refund that money. Okay. But what it does is it allows us to get an engineering stamp, which does cost quite a bit of money. It gets you the permit packet and everything you need to submit to the city. We don't ship a kit until you get the approvals. And this is only if you're going to be grid tied, right? Or you have to get those approvals. And the reason is because of those kickbacks. We wait to fully assemble and ship everything until we know that the system that you've designed actually is going to pass. Because we've done it in the past where we'll ship you your kit and they say, oh, you only need 12 panels, you can't have 16. Or, you can't, though your structure doesn't carry the weight, or there's so many things that we've seen kickback. So we just wait. And then once you give us the thumbs up, that's when we go ahead and ship your kit within usually about 3 days of you telling us you've got your approvals. You'll get that kit shipped. And that's where the permitting stage kind of comes into play for us, and why it's important that we get everything as correct as we can before we submit, so it saves time on that back end.
Depends. Rocky Mountain Power is anywhere from 14 to 21 days from your submittal.
Yep.
And then your city is anywhere, they have up to 21 days to review the process. At any point in time, they can review and then kick it back, and then they have longer time. So depends on how quick it goes through. And simultaneously. So I typically, so I'll submit Rocky Mountain Power, and I'll get my city plan set going right away. For Rocky Mountain Power, you do need a site plan, and you do need your one-line diagram. It shows all your electrical stuff. So we need that plan set prior to submitting to either one of those. So, but yeah. And then if we're in Ivans, I could, like I was down in St. George yesterday, I could submit by 10 o'clock. By 2 o'clock, I got a permit. There's certain jurisdictions that are just on top of it.
Yep.
Depends on their workflow a lot of times and who's in front of you. Because once they get it, they just stack it through. Basement permits, solar permits, over-the-counter permits. That's what it's called, an over-counter permit. They're usually fairly quick because they're not 20 pages, 30 pages of highly detailed stuff. They don't need a plan reviewer or examiner. A permit tech could usually go through that and then get it to you. So Rocky Mountain Power is just in their program. You get a number, and then it's just a number.
We have a great example right here. We have a Tooele resident and we have a Colorado resident. And Tooele, you were just out there for us.
I walked in, I got a permit over the counter. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
So he got what he needed to.
It was Grantsville, but
but he got it in that same time. Now his buddy who lives in Colorado, there's some companies out there. Eversource is a utility company out there. They'll take on average that we see between 3 to 9 months. So it's really tricky. That's where, springtime now, this is why we're kicking off this class, because if you started now, you could usually get your kit. For the average customer, our turnaround time is about 8 weeks. If things are moving fast, you guys move fast with us, and we do it 4 to 8 weeks typically, and then you can have your kit. So now is that time to really look into it and start if you wanted to reap the benefits this year.
Yep.
But your local AHJs, that's a number one question we get from our customers is, well, how long is it going to take? Well, we'd like to tell you we could do our part in probably 3 business days for you, but it's the interchange between us and the customers, the AHJs, and that can tack on that extra time, which is just unfortunate. So
yeah, most definitely. All right, the fun part, tools. Who all loves tools? I've got a garage full of tools. I got a trailer full of tools. I got too many tools. I brought a couple today. I've got my little service kit. That's pretty much all I brought. Anytime I go out to do service, I've got like 2 buckets of tools, my protection equipment, and then one little tool case that I actually travel with, little pack out tool case. So you got your drill. I've got a unibit in it. That's going to drill pretty much 90% of all my holes in my electrical boxes. I got my impact, and it's just got a 1/2-inch socket. The one thing we do love about Snap and Rack, everything is 1/2-inch.
Yep.
I don't have to be on the roof with 10 different attachments with a 3/8 and a 5/16 and this, and it's all 1/2-inch. Every bolt, every nut, every screw, 1/2-inch. Handy dandy fish tape. This one glows in the dark. I love it. It's fiberglass. It's easy to pull wires. I don't pull a lot of wires, and the way that I do it, it's pretty simple, especially on a smaller system. It's pretty easy to just push wires. If you have to pull wires, you're probably having a little bit more trouble in your day. But good fish tape's easy to have. Good to have. Voltmeter. You need a voltmeter, but on that voltmeter, you need to make sure that it has DC. We can talk about that specifically. This is a Klein tool. It's Home Depot. There's better ones, but for any standard homeowner, Klein's a great tool. It has AC, DC, different voltage and different amperage. And then just a nice headlamp. You'll be in your attic. If you do it proper, you should have it in your attic. You can do, if you love conduit, you can do conduit runs. Measuring tape. Several different types of marking utensils. Sharpie, pencil, crayon, and chalk. So you can use sidewalk chalk. This is a railroad chalk, actually. So when I bought it off Amazon 5 years ago, and we still have half a box. So it's pretty awesome. You can get chalk at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever. You can get the crayons there too. When we go out and mark out your roof or do a layout, and we'll talk about that next, is we use chalk to mark. Chalk washes away. The crayon stays a little bit longer, but it still washes away. So if you need to mark something and you need a little bit better marking, all you do is come here and mark out your panels. Then I know where my penetrations are. I know all that stuff. So Sharpie is great for electrical conduit. Your pencil to mark out your walls. Pencil will wash away as well. Sharpie doesn't wash away most of the time. So a good measuring tape. I brought my little guy because I don't like to pack my boat anchor. But when I'm up on a roof marking out, I usually have a 35 or even a longer tape, a 100-footer. And so you can pull from one roof. You can set your first screw, pull, mark all your joists or trusses, and do that layout. So we have wire strippers. Probably one of the best, most important tools, this guy. You want to make sure that box is level, right? Have you ever been to a project or a house and you're like, okay, that looks good. You know, it doesn't, it makes you, especially when an inspector comes and he sees something sideways or bass backwards, he's like, okay, I need to really check everything now. But if everything looks plumb, clean, and straight, a lot of confidence will come into that. So stopping, taking a second, remounting a box, undoing a box, making sure that's straight, that's key. All right, so layout. How am I supposed to find?
But we have just real quick, any questions about what we've talked about? Now we're actually going to go into the physical install of getting the panels on the roof. Anything up to this point? Great, let's go.
Okay. How am I supposed to get on my roof and find my rafters when I can't visually see them, right? If you're a framer and you framed your house, you probably know where they're at. Or you can pull measurements and be like, okay, my eave's a 12-inch eave. I need to come 12 inches off, then that's where my first girder truss is, or my gable truss, and then come over 24 inches. Then you just drill a hole, and you're like, nope, missed, right? Or I think I got it, right? Well, the good news is there's a couple different attachments. We've got some over here we'll show you. Most of the kits come out with flashing attachments, correct?
Yeah.
So flashing attachment's awesome for two reasons. It's wide. If you miss the truss, you've got about 6 inches you can move and still get it flashed.
We'll just do this.
You can pass them around.
Take a look at it.
But there's a couple tricks. They have a $3,000 gun that you can come and mark all your trusses and radar it and kind of screen it in. Or you can take the handy dandy $12.95 hammer. And this is what
I wouldn't do this one.
This one? Oh, this one's better? Okay.
One.
So everybody's hitting a hollow wall, right? Everybody's hitting that sheetrock wall. And it's just hollow, right? Same thing you do on the sheetrock. You just knock on it, right? You can hear the hollow. But if you find a truss, you can actually hear that thud. So that's how we do it. We go through and we find those thuds, we mark it, we kind of measure twice, and then we take our drill and drill a little pilot hole. And if you hit, just like sheetrock, if you just go through the sheetrock or through the plywood, you bury it and it's free floating, there's nothing there. Move over 3/4 of an inch one way or the other, and then you usually hit that solid 2x4, and you'll feel it. And that's where you want your lags to go if you're using these flashing types or single point connections.
And just recall, that is a pretty wide piece of flashing, so you do have about a good 3-inch variance. If you think you're close, that flashing does cover it, so you don't have to worry about it leaking afterwards. There is a new, you got it right here.
So
technology and snap and rack. This is why we tried to do some of this partnering with the right companies for you guys. That can be challenging, not only finding the truss, but also you have to actually lift your shingles, and you have to pop some screws, make sure that the flashing gets seated properly. You want it to be nice and even with that shingle. So holding it, that's about, what, a 10-inch flashing, and we only have about 4 inches showing. So you do have to, pop it up on a nice hot day. If you're doing this in the middle of summer, those become pretty sticky, and it can be harder to rip them up, and you end up damaging singles.
The thing I love top mounted flashings nowadays. Yeah. I use a different one. I use a single point connection because I still hit joists, and it's one connection, one penetration point. But if I'm out there on my roof and I have to pop these shingles, I just broke that sill. Now I'm going to put a flashing in there and reseal it, but I hate breaking that sill because it's just another potential leak point. These guys are deck mounts. They come with shorter screws, and you put 4 of them in there, and they go anywhere on your roof.
You do not have to hit a truss is where we're going with these. If you hit a truss and you got it mapped out, You can get away with just 2, but all 4, if you can see right here, they just screw right into your roof. You just have to make sure that you're lining them up just right on your actual shingles. And you can't be overlapping and you can't be in those little cracks. So you do have to adjust. They make it a little easier for DIYers. Everything has a plus and a minus. The downside to one of these is they do take more roof sealant, as in once you're about to penetrate, you do have to fill it up with some roof sealant, and then you drill it down, and that's how it prevents the leaks there. So
You also have to get a chalk line out and snap your. I mean, you should get a chalk line out and snap your lines anyways if you're doing it one time, because you want your rail to be within that same distance and shingle. If your shingles are pretty square and straight, most of the time they should be, but every once in a while your shingles go crooked on your house. You don't want your rail to do that as well. Go ahead.
What are those guys? The ones that you
Uh huh.
What is it? What is it?
So these are deck mounts. Yep, deck mounts are. You have flashings and you have a deck mount.
Yep.
Did you say there's one that just has one penetration?
I do. Yeah. Those won't come out, but those. I don't even know if you guys carry them still. Probably not.
Which ones?
The quick bolts.
Oh, no.
No, they don't carry quick bolts anymore. I like the quick bolts, but there's no forgiveness.
Yep.
And then you got to hit the joist, and you only have a 3 1/4 inch disc, so it's very unforgiving. So if you're new to it, doing it one time, I wouldn't recommend that. The cost is about the same, but speed for me, right? My guys are in and off that roof 6 to 8 hours. You're going to be doing this on a weekend. You're going to go do one task. Like you're going to do your site survey. You're going to do your layout. Then you're going to go do your penetrations and your flashings, and then you're going to do your racking and railing, and then you're going to do your panels. So you're probably 3-4 weekends, depending on how big your system is.
Yeah.
So,
and like I said, once again, we tried to. We know that that's a product. I mean, what they have coming out, you guys are gonna. If you do your research, you'll see there's some really neat ways to mount panels to your roofs. They have railless systems now, right? Which are even better. You don't have to haul 14-foot long pieces of rail onto your roof. But once again, if you're doing it one time, the forgiveness on that is about 0.
mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes Teddy, we've talked about it.
We shipped a package out to Hawaii. We flew out to Hawaii and got there, and we're sitting there in the middle of this island. We don't have this. We don't have that. We don't have and then trying to map it on these homes, and we're like, oh man, we should have done different. But it was more cost effective to ship the railless system over. But we probably should have done the railless system in the warehouse first, at least once or twice, before we go on this island and figure out what we are missing. It was a fun week. Mm-hmm. Anything's fun in Hawaii, so it doesn't. And we made the best of it. So, yep. Yeah, so you don't pre-drill anymore on those deck mounts. What you do is you take the deck mount, you map out your roof, map out your array, tick mark where you're going to do it so you can visually reference, and then all you do is you sit down, you put some M1 or a Chemlink sealant in there, and then you put it on your deck and hit the 4 screws. Yep, in the void space underneath there. Yeah, if
there's one right here, yeah. So what you can see here is it's got this little protected in here. And that's where that sealant sits. And when you drill through it, it grabs onto your screw and seals it internally. So.
Yep. And so it's a polybutylene. So it's very, very high rated. It's a 30+ year. If it's not exposed, it's going to last a lifetime. But even on your flashings, you still have sealant. Yep. You just use about twice as much on the deck mounts because it's a bigger void. So when I pre-drill into my joist, I'll pre-drill. I'll put my sealant down. I'll put my flashing in and then drop my lag and L foot through. So the good thing about the deck roof or the deck penetrations, deck mounts, 4 screws, the L foot's already there and your saddle's already there. So there's a lot of little things that's already put together, already on that deck mount.
He said saddle, so going over another piece on the snap and rack system, this is the saddle, the adjustment. This is where the name snap and rack comes from. Your rail will literally just click in and then you just snap it into place. And that's all you have to do with this rail system. So it's more important to make sure that your feet get on there correct. And then the rail will literally just snap right into place. And so that just sits right into the saddle. This one's connected directly to it. You have, for the flashing system, this is the L bracket that comes up on one giant lag, and it has the saddle attached to it.
Yep. And the lag, did you have a lag? You don't have a lag over here, but the lag has a little
Can you grab
umbrella
the
or
lag.
it has a. It's just like any type of metal. It has that neoprene washer on it and goes through.
Is there a system that puts the panels flat on the shingles, or is that a terrible idea?
It's a terrible idea. So
Yeah.
you do need some air underneath there. You need a minimum of 1 inch for breathability. Basically, you're putting microcomputers on your roof. So you need that circumference for that heat distribution. Also,
Your
getting under
electrical
there to
can't.
wire, you can't have anything sitting on the roof.
Mhm.
I've seen so many awful installs.
And then here's the screws for
yeah.
the deck mount.
So
I've seen so many awful installs
here.
where
Oh,
that
sorry.
rail is down on that roof,
So
and then
the
you have
little
wires
screw
on this roof,
is
just
for
like this
the
trunk
deck
cable.
mount, and then the large one is the lag bolt. So and then he'll pass it around. So the little one is going to be for your deck mount, the 4. I'll let him see real quick. The large one's going to be your 1 lag for the shingle method. Okay, you guys can kind of take a look.
So I've seen so many times like this cable or any cables on the roof. Well, that's okay for the first couple of years probably, but it's not to code and it's going to wear. It has heat. You're conducting massive amount of electricity through here and electrons. That anytime you have that, you want it up off the roof so it has that space to dissipate the heat. So,
Yep.
Snapping rack's awesome. Everything snaps in, right? Your mid clamps, your end clamps, everything goes in and then snaps together. And you can visually hear it snap in. So you click it in, snapped in.
And you have it.
And then you can push it and slide it and move it. So all these all these are 1/2 inch again as well. That's what I love about them. Everything's 1/2 inch.
Yep.
After I drill my holes, and switch my 1/2 inch, I never switch my gun again. It's all 1/2 inch. So.
Yep. And just to reiterate, we are not sponsored by Snap and Rack. We're not sponsored by anybody that we're going to talk about today. This is just Solar Wholesale doing our research and trying to find out what's the best way, like I said, to do this one time.
Yep.
I've gone with Teddy. I've worked on other systems as well where they're different, where you're changing heads, and if you're on the roof and you miss your pocket, you're dropping your 3/4 trying to grab your 1/2 inch, and now it's rolled down to the gutter or it's fell onto the floor.
Or you've hit a panel and you've shattered a panel.
You know, so we try to consider all this and go, okay, never have to take it off, right? You're doing your roof, you've got one simple method, and that's how it's going to go. So great, easy install.
Awesome. All right, so rails. The rails come in 14-foot lengths, 164 inches. 172 now? Okay.
Yeah.
So the panels get a little bit longer, the rails getting a little longer. What it is, just extruded aluminum. It's very lightweight. It's easy to handle, easy to carry. And all you do is take it up on the roof and you snap it in. Now they have a splice as well, where a splice actually clicks in and then. Oh, perfect.
Right here. Kinda
So
hard to
there's a
see.
rail splice right there, and it's got a little 4-inch piece on there. You can extend that rail 4 inches, another 14 feet, or however long you need. They always send you extra rail, where say your rail is supposed to be 18 feet long. So you throw a splice in there, you can cut a rail in half if you want. If you got the space, just leave that rail long. Leave it long until you have to put your panels on, because you're going to want to square your panels, you're going to want to do a couple different things.
So just so you kind of give you guys that reference, this is
Yeah.
how big they are when they ship. Yep. Super lightweight. I mean, you guys can see one hand holding it up.
Yep.
Not bad.
And so I always leave it long. And if my panel ends here or here, then we just cut it there after the fact. That's where you get the clean vertical lines. They've got hidden underneath universal end clamps where you can't see your end clamps. They're not up over the panels.
Yep.
Those kind of things.
Yep. You've got one end clamp right there.
Yep.
You can show them, but just for point of reference, this is what it looks like when it's on your roof right here.
So it goes up underneath. It just underneath the C clamp, it gets the edge of the panel and clamps it down. All the mid clamps and end clamps have these little piercing for ground piercing. You'll fill it in here. We'll pass it around. It's a little piercing lug. So everything's grounded through the whole system, and then all the way back from your rail is grounded into your electrical system. So those are a couple little fun things with that. You want to pass those around?
Yep. Let you guys see this.
Go that way, and I'll do this way.
Do they make mid clamps that are hidden, or do they always come over?
No, they're all on top. That little
Okay.
plastic piece is a little aesthetic thing that you can
The
push
black
on
one
there.
is going to be your mid
cover
clamp,
that.
and this is the end clamp. Secures it. And then this right here, this is called an end cap. Did you go over this one?
I just
So,
did, yeah.
Yeah, the end cap right here. We left it so you guys could see the actual end clamp, but the cap will just go over that to make it look aesthetically better. It doesn't serve really any other purpose. The reason there's a hole is if there was a chance that water got into it, it could drain out. But you won't see it. It's on the bottom, so it does look much more aesthetic and seamless in color.
So micros. You don't have, you got one over there.
I got one right here, yeah.
So microinverters. Who knows the difference between a microinverter and a string inverter?
Hey, Dave. Let me chew.
Okay, so string inverter is a central inverter system where all the DC power goes all the way down through your attic, through your roof, down the side of your house into a inverter, central inverter. A microinverter changes from DC, direct current, your solar panels, your right here from your inputs, it microinverts it into AC power. So it goes in at 300 some or 30 something volts, 40 volts, whatever your module is, and then it transfers it to 120 to or 240 volts coming out, depending on what your micro is. This is a so there's different ideas. There's mechanically or electrically, there's pros and cons to both. Pros to DC power going all the way down, and pro to AC power. I like AC power because I've got 10 of these on my roof. One goes bad, I've still got a system. My DC inverter, my central inverter goes bad, I don't have any power. So that's why I like microinverters. There is conversion rates and ratios about when you should change from DC to AC and back and forth if you got batteries. And it's really, you can get into the weeds on that. But for homeowners, for residential grid tied power, microinverters are probably the most economical way to go and the cleanest way to go. Especially, this is all plug and play. You don't have to worry about how many volts on that string, how many volts on this string. Just plug the wires in. That's what's super awesome. This is the DS3S. Is this the S?
Yeah.
This is the L model.
Oh, it's the L.
So this will do a little bit higher wattage for the new panels. But there's different, you'll get the spec sheet on this. You'll get all the data information. But again, it's all plug and play. It's got self-internal grounding. It's got a ground bushing on the back. It grounds out to your rail. Once you get that set down in, you plug your DC positive negative into it. It's pretty clean, pretty simple.
And just so as research wise, if you guys go about doing that, you'll see for the micro inverter section, you'll see about usually 3 different options. Some people still manufacture, this is an old AP Systems QS1 where it would do 4 panels. So 1 inverter to the 4 panels. It worked good, but same thing, once you get the 4 in there, there's just, the more panels connected to 1, the more issues that can be done. You have what we prefer, which is the DS3 or the the DS3, and it comes with 2 ports, so you can do 2 panels to 1. If 1 microinverter goes down, you just lose the 2 panels. A lot of our kits are somewhere between 10 to 18 panels, so losing 1 microinverter at 10 panels, that's 20% of your system. That can add up. Whereas if you'd be 40%, or if you were a string, you'd be 100% if you lost it. So there are those. Go ahead.
Would you use microinverters on an off-grid system, or is it mostly for grid?
So this is all grid tied. Yeah. So once you go to off grid, so grid tied has this thing that has to be rapid shutdown compliant.
Yep.
All your micros, all your inverters, even this guy here is a Tigo optimizer. It goes on a Solarc or a different string inverter. Multiple inverter systems use this module. So this is rapid shutdown compliance. Rapid shutdown compliance means all your power needs to be dissipated within 30 seconds of any grid outage or power outage. So say somebody wrecks into the transformer down the street, your house goes out of power, all your solar has to dissipate within 30 seconds. Why? To keep guys like me safe when we go in and repair those boxes and the linemen, right? We don't want to be working on a system that's energized. So again, safety 101, you're up on your roof doing the mechanical stuff. Once you get to the electrical stuff, power off. Everything's powered down. Anytime you're in a panel, power down. Yep. Lock out, tag out, whatever you need to do to make sure that nobody's going to turn that on while you're doing a J-box upstairs, or you don't have any energized power upstairs on your roof, that kind of thing. But that's a great question. So we're talking 90% grid tied right now, and then off grid we'll talk about specifics of how I would do that or do that. So
these optimizers, as he said, they on an off-grid system, they're usually 1-to-1. So one panel, one optimizer to shut it down. Enphase is a very popular name. They make microinverters, which are phenomenal. A little bit on the pricey side, they're a premium microinverter. And this is a 1-to-1. They do one panel, one micro.
and this is also plug and play. They have little connections that plug into here. You can't mess up microinverters. Well, you can, but if you follow your plan set, you shouldn't be able to. They'll tell you how many microinverters per string, how many connection points, how many panels, the size of the panel, the wattage of the panel, the voltage of the panel. All that is considered when you map and get your plan set. So it's specific to your house, to your needs. And again, they just attach the rail by MLPEs. They're again, these have the ground bushings and ground bites on there, so everything's snapped into the rail and bolted down again with a 1/2 inch.
Yep. If you notice the ones outside, those are our 450s. They're our 7-foot tall panel, basically 4-foot wide. Usually too much for a house. Ground mounts, perfect. That's why we got them. The ones that we normally sell are going to be about a 370 watt panel.
370 to 410.
To 410, yeah. And here's one right here.
It's about 40 inches by 69 inches. This is when I say I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
But no, so it's just under 6 foot here. About 45 pounds. It's a sheet of plywood. When you're handing this up to the roof, taking it to the roof, this is the hardest. This is the most physical part of solar installs. Each panel has a serial number, production date. It also has a little data sheet on the back. Every panel has this. It tells you what it is, who manufactured it, the voltage, the wattage, the perfect test condition. And that's one thing we want to talk about. This is a 370.
Yep.
So this is 370 watts, perfect test condition, PTC rating or STC, standard
testing.
Standard testing.
Yeah.
So that says it's on a perfect angle, perfect pitch, perfect azimuth. It'll equal X, 370. Nowhere on any house or property will you get 370 in the real world. You got the distance from the sun, you've got the tilt of the sun, you got the angle of the sun, you got the angle of the house, you got the shade, you've got the clouds, you've got all these other factors. You'll probably get about 85% of this production rate out of the microinverters, out of your string inverters, out of your total wattage. So, but that's all taken into consideration on the offset, on the algorithms, on your plan set, on your proposal. All that's taken care of. You don't have to mechanically think about it. It's all programmed in the spec sheet.
The only reason we mention that is because when you get your production, for easy math, if you had 10 of these, you're monitoring your system, you're thinking, I should have 3,700 watts producing. That would be incorrect. That would be the 100% rule. Your total wattage with 10 panels should be right around that, like 3,200 watts.
And that's perfect day at noon or your highest radiation.
So there are some debunks in here that we want to clarify too when you are looking at this. So that's where we try to size, or when you guys size your systems, size it appropriately. There's websites that you can go to. PV Watts is one where it will actually tell you the estimated production for your system and not what the panels say it should do.
Yeah. You put it in there, a 4 kW system, and it'll tell you on each day about how much solar radiation you get. They have a whole history of information from decades and decades of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And say the 450s are just too heavy for houses.
They're too big.
They're too big
on the frame size.
Yeah.
So yeah, but you can get 415s. You can get 420s.
Yep.
They've got some 415s over there, or 410s back here. So, but then you start saying, okay, I can't push. Even this is the large, the L on this is the higher wattage micro. You're still maxed out at a certain wattage through the micro. So you want to make sure that you're putting the right fuel in the right gas tank to the right system, right? Yep. You're not going to put premium in a little Pinto, but you're going to be putting premium in your Lambo, right? So you want to make sure that every component of your system is equally charged. Because I can put a 600 watt panel on here. I'm still only going to get 350, 400 watts through it. There's no sense to putting in that higher panel.
Sorry to clarify, you're saying 450 is too much wattage or it's too big?
Both.
Yeah.
Both for this. It depends on your system. If you've got a string inverter system off grid, put 450s. You're usually working on a big barn or a ground mount. But when I have to say I go to a house and I've got 10 panels and I've got a penetration here and here and I've got to manipulate or move, it gets it's putting a 24-foot truck in a 25-foot garage. It gets very tight to maneuver that thing around, right? So, but then you have the wattage issue where I can't, if this is only maxed out at 450 per side and I max it out at two 450s, I'm never going to hit that. I'm going to cap and cut, which isn't a bad thing always, but why would we oversize your module and undersize your micro? So there's some other issues we'd have to look at. There's other options. We could put 450s all day long in your house, but adding 2 more panels, we're just going to get you the same wattage instead of adding 10 450s, right? You're still going to make up 400 watts, 800 watts by putting 400s the whole time and putting 2 more panels in.
The majority of the time, this 370 size or a 410 size, they will actually, you will get a more efficient system using that on a residential home than you would a larger 450. In these smaller areas, a 22 panel system, I can get 22 370s and have a larger system, but the area would only give me about 18 450s. And so going with the 370s, I can actually get a larger system in that small space. And that's why we go with these smaller for residential homes.
And like commercial, we're doing 550s upstairs on this building.
Yeah.
And they're massive panels. So yeah. You had a question?
Just more power unit better.
Well, just think if you're putting if you're putting a fire out with a fire hose, great, right? You don't want to put a fire hose on your water bed, right? And so that's the same thing. It's like if you start putting too much power into there, you're going to be taxing that system at that higher range all the time. So if you have a peak, great. But if you're always at that, say you're always, at that high, you're gonna damage stuff, and it's not gonna last as long. And so you don't want to run at that peak all the time. So, electrical.
Before we jump there,
Yeah.
do you guys have questions? Do you want some tips, tricks on doing the actual roof layout of this? We kind of went over it. This is a very high level. There's so much to go over. We're just kind of touching on some of the basics. But if you guys have questions, please feel free to let us know. And like I said, afterwards for you here, we can do some hands-on for you real quick.
Undrill and drill and move some stuff.
Are rails always horizontal or always vertical, or it just depends?
Depends.
So they run perpendicular to your trusses. So it depends on if you have a steel structure or girders or beams, we can change and adjust. But most of the time they're horizontal across your roof. Yep. So good question. Yeah. So, it depends on how much is put in. So you got the 370s. There's different series of micros. There's 3 different series in the DS. There's a DS flat series. There's DS3 and a DSL. And so each one has a different setting. So,
yep. So just for easy math, I don't know on these DS3s off the top of my head right now. I apologize.
This one is,
but they'll have a number of basically voltage or wattage that it can intake, and you have to. So we'll say 600 is what the wattage that this can take. If you put 2 370s on there, you're going to be looking at that 700.
The S is 680 or 700, and then it goes up from there. I think this is 900. So you can do the 400s on each leg on the S's or on the L's and just be fine.
So kind of going off topic, but just so you guys know, when you're sizing these, if you have an inverter that says it will do 400, right, 400 watts, and you put a 450 watt on there, you're clipping it that 50. But clipping is what that means is you have the max capacity to do so, but your inverter will stop you at this point. So your panel might be able to produce the 450, but we've already discussed that 450 is still a premium less. So you'll be about that 420. Well, you're going to lose about 20 of those wattage, okay? But when you go, okay, so I want to go with a higher inverter so I'm not clipping and I can get the full max, well, this inverter now takes more power to turn on. So you're going to lose that early morning light to get that max in the afternoon. So you really have to, you're going to lose either way. So it's just picking which battle you want to lose. We go back and forth with our customers. 90% of the time, that being your inverter just slightly under so that you get a little clipping is what they call it. That's the preferred method because you're going to lose out on that maybe a couple days of the year when it's peak prime time. but the majority of the time you're going to get it so it's just underneath that barrier, and you'll max out your system that way. So you can get that early morning light as well, and then later into the evening versus trying to max out that short peak time. So that's kind of the clipping, and you'll hear that term.
So the other thing is what happens to electronics after years? They have degradation. So after a year, we have about 0.5% of degradation per year on solar panels, on the microinverters, on your system. So say you're clipping at 20 watts or 30 watts or 40 watts, and we program that in your system. In 5 years, you're not going to be clipping anymore because you're below that degradation, but you're still getting 100% of your proposed or suspected wattage. So there, all that plays in. That's why, sure, you can go online and pick and choose and put your system together yourself, and you might save some money. I don't even know if that's available now. I mean, the costs these guys are at are very, very competitive, but having the expertise or having that somebody research and do all that for you, and sure, fact check, double check, right? So you're not getting hosed, but having that expertise or somebody on the other phone, on the other line when you call, and you're a customer of them rather than a client, then that's just a purchaser, that's a huge difference. So, yeah.
This is kind of a big question, so if you want to think about it, but I'm just wondering general price range. Like if we were talking about this system, what would it cost if it was grid tied, professionally installed versus off grid? I buy my stuff from Solar Wholesale versus off grid. I just buy my stuff off KSL.
Yeah.
So KSL classifieds is fun.
Yeah.
You until you get it. It could be new, it could be used, it could be old warehouse stuff that's been sitting in a warehouse for 2 years. Who's from Box Elder? You are. So there's a company up in is it Cash up in Logan? Is that Cash? Yeah. There's a company there that does stuff nationwide. They have a warehouse of some 300 watt panels. We haven't installed 300 watt panels for 2 years, and they're selling them, right? Or 320s, right? And so I'm like, that's older technology. That's been sitting in a warehouse for 2-3 years. Nothing wrong with it. You can get it for a good price. They're still selling at 30 to 40 cents a watt on some of those panels, but you can get the same brand new stuff for the same cost. So that's kind of some of the homework that like, could you get stuff cheaper? Yeah, you could, but you're going to be spending your truck time, your time. So it's like where that's at. And cost of install, they'll go over that. The sales guys will go over that, and it's already programmed. The solar is awesome. It's not like going and doing a remodel or building a house. Like, well, I think it's going to be this. You're going to change your mind. It's going to be this. 1, 2, 3. Here's your price, and that's what it is. You got door knockers. Door knockers will sell it to you for $4 or $5 a watt, sometimes even more. I've seen mid threes on door knocker companies. Guess what? There's only like 2 or 3 big companies left. I've had my Red Sun's been 2016, and we're still in business. We're still doing just small projects, still living, still servicing customers that have been with me for almost 10 years now. But there's many that that have gone out of business, and we get plenty of service calls. I know Stacy loves getting service calls. Hey, I installed with XYZ company. Can you guys service my system? Sure, it's going to cost you, right? So we do a lot of service for companies that gone out of business. So be careful who you buy from, but also, are you buying from the company or are you buying from the sales organization? Those door knockers, those sales guys, they're really good, right? They don't take no for an answer. But so you got to make sure who you're buying from and who your contracts with and who your agreements with. So
Let me just
Yeah.
clarify the question real quick. So it kind of goes back to the cost of permitting.
Yep.
When you're having Rocky Mountain involved, you're comparing apples to apples, grid tied versus off grid. How much extra cost do you add on to have Rocky Mountain permitting, extra boxes, extra shutoffs, all that?
they pretty much do it all inclusive. Rocky Mountain Power is $64.95 for your net metering agreement through them. Your permit can be anywhere from $25. I've seen it for $25 up to $1,000, depending on your jurisdiction. I haven't done one up in Box Elder for a hot minute, but so that fee is on top of whatever Solar Wholesale will charge. So they'll give you your equipment fee, your permit fee, or your plan set fee, your engineering fee, and then your what do you call it? What do you call it? Your oversight fee or your management fee or
Yeah, just project management.
fee. So yeah, and so that'll all be broken down for you.
And it depends. So we're getting in. This is kind of our opening of getting into the off-grid system. We've always said no. Solar, and the reason that we've not helped our DIYers in the off-grid system is because it is very complicated.
Technical.
It's very technical. Going on the off-grid system, you get some, I don't want to say old timers, but you get guys who are very good with lead acid batteries, and they can make these 6-volt, 12-volt battery systems, right? My age group, the only time I've ever seen one of those is in a 4-wheeler, right? And I just know that I got to put red on red, black on black, jump it, right, and get it going, or buy a new one. So the skill level is very different. Even from the batteries, when you go off grid, you do need to have batteries, right? Batteries, you have the lead acid, you have lithium ion, you have lithium iron phosphate. There's all these different brands now. And then how those batteries install on the off-grid system can go from very simple to very complicated. So over the last year, we've Solar Wholesale done a lot of research and decided to get back in the game, but thinking of our DIYers, what's going to be the best option. And so we've partnered with, well, we've chosen, not partnered with, but we've chosen HomeGrid and Solark as our off-grid systems. And the reason for that is they speak to each other. What you'll learn is, okay, a particular inverter may work with one set of batteries. Well, the communication between that inverter and the battery, one could be English, one could be Spanish.
Or male and female.
Male or female, right? And so just because this battery, you like this battery from the research, doesn't mean it's going to talk to this inverter. And so now you've got the system. Now they're not communicating. You have all these other issues. Now you can't return certain parts because you've already installed it. And so it can get very overwhelming very quickly. For that, we've done all that research, and we've chosen two companies who will help each other, right? You can call HomeGrid and they'll help you with your Solark. You call Solark, they will help you with your HomeGrid. That's the kind of service that I want to provide to our customers. When you guys are, if you're off grid, right? You might be at a cabin at Strawberry and you have to drive down to get your cell service, make your phone call. That's what I'm thinking about when you're going off grid. You don't want to be on the phone with X battery trying to work with Y battery. You have to go buy 4 extra parts, and now you're ordering all this in. You have to leave your Canyon, and it's just too much. So we want to simplify it, and that's why we're getting into this now. Teddy's been doing this for years, but going into the off grid, it can be very tricky at the end of the day, and costs come into play because there's a lot of unknowns until you get started.
The other fun thing about these companies, you can call them. You don't have to call Solar Wholesale or me.
Yep.
Say it's today, Saturday at 11 o'clock. These guys aren't in the office, but they are,
yep.
Right? And you can get help today. So partnering with those larger corporations, companies that have that are key. So, yeah.
EcoFlow?
EcoFlow is not complicated, but it's also not an off-grid system.
Yeah.
EcoFlow is great for emergency temporary bedside power. So there's a couple different types of battery or battery systems. There's people say whole home battery backup. There's almost no such thing unless you're spending a lot of money.
Six figures almost.
Yeah. So temporary backup critical load is what we typically do. You can do a couple light circuits. You got your blower on your furnace for heat. You've got a couple things to cook with, right? A different just survival. You can heat and cool 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms in your house. You got some lights. You got your microwave. EcoFlows are great for bedside or temporary power, where it's a smaller system, smaller unit. I don't think we have one here.
No.
I've got one. I've got a different one. I've installed plenty of EcoFlows and plenty of other smaller systems where you plug it in. It's like a portable generator. It's a quiet generator. It's an electric generator, right? So it will give you a couple hours of power for your oxygen machine, for your CPAP machine, for your whatever bedside medical. And that's kind of where I do that. It's really, really lightweight. Yeah. It'll run a projector while you're camping. It'll run your RV when you're camping. It'll run some cool things. It'll run your Traeger. That's how I cooked on a Traeger last weekend. It had a little battery pack. So it's great for that kind of stuff.
And just as DIYers, I want to warn you, if you look at going to custom, the other item that you need to look into when you choose a battery or an inverter is, are they DIY friendly? Just because you can buy it doesn't mean that you can install it. I know that's strange, but we have had customers who've done their own research. They go and they buy a system. That system is not working. They'll call said battery manufacturer or inverter, and they go, we can't find you in our system. And you're like, well, what do you mean? You're not a certified installer. We cannot help you. And that is the answer that you'll get, and you'll get hung up on.
Yeah.
And so that is tricky as well. So trying to find the correct product for someone who's a DIYer is tricky as well. And that's why we have not done it until recently. And that's why our options are very limited, because for you, if you do it yourself, you need that support eventually, right? You might have to make a phone call and you'll need that support. So
And this is all plug and play. We try to make it as simple as possible. And anybody here could answer a question or find that answer very quickly if they had that question.
I wanted to talk about a tip really quick, going back into the install. Depending on your roof, right? This could be an actual roof that you're working on. I don't know that many homes in Utah are quite this steep, but we have done installs, and a few tricks of the trade that I've seen. Teddy might, I don't know if he likes this tip or not. When you build your system and you're mapping it out, the first thing that I've seen Teddy do and other installers is they'll install the bottom row, okay? Before you even get up to these higher rows, get this first one down so you have a base. When you climb up on your roof, you can stand on these. So now once you climb up on your roof, you can set a panel down, you can set more rail down, you can set a box and hold it on your roof, and you have a base plate. Now, so not everything's continually sliding off the roof. So when you get up there and you map it out, install your bottom rail first, have a base place, and then from there you can work your way up and continue up that roof, and you have a stepping point all the way up.
If your roof is that steep, call me. Honestly, it's you don't want to do that. And I don't get on the roof. I've got guys. I got 3 little guys that jump up there.
So
your attic is going to be wonderful, though. I'll tell you that, because it's going to have plenty of space.
So, little tips. Feel free to stand on them. Use it for some stability once it's screwed in good. Use it to hold. And then coming down, right, our inverters, you guys, we get this fairly often. Let me just show you. We get this call. Most people understand, but I want to let you guys know. On these inverters, it looks like it should be plug and play, but this actually has a little plastic cap on it. Oh, no, this one doesn't.
That one doesn't. Yeah,
you already took it off.
Yeah.
So, oh,
Even
see, I
the
just
trunk
tricked
line has
myself.
cap.
There's a little tiny plastic cap on these, and so if you're not getting that plug and play option available, there's usually a cover, because if any one of those pins get dented or just slightly off center, it will throw off some of your voltage and you don't get the production you want. So always remove your cap. Make sure that you have a really good, tight, secured connection. If you don't, once you get all the way down to the ground and the panels are back installed and you're checking it, if that connection is not tight, it will throw off that little section. You'll have to be back up, removing panels, making sure the wires are tight. When our DIYers call us and say, hey, I'm not getting a reading out of my panels, the first thing that we're going to tell you to do, remove your panel, check your connections, right? That's the very first step. And so for you guys, when you're doing that install, before you lay any panels down and actually secure them, I would say double, triple check, make sure they're in there nice and tight. Check each pin before you connect it to make sure that they're not bent or anything. And then you got that nice and tight secured.
We're going to pretend this is a panel, because I'm going to make sure the mic can get this. But these are called MC4 connectors, these little plastic things. These are MC4s. They go on every PV wire. They are water rated. They're tight. They got a little O-ring in here. All you're going to do is plug and play. This is going to click in. It only goes in one, right? This isn't 2024. This is, so we only got male to female, and you're going to hear an audible click, and then you're going to tug. If that's not tugging and you didn't hear that click, even my seasoned installers don't know how many times you don't have that. Yeah, you want to do that? And they come with a cool little tool. They unclick, but you get that physical click. And if you don't hear that click or you get busy, that's your failure point. 99% of the problems are your connection points if you ever have a problem. So
we don't sell these with our kits currently, but this is something that I've considered putting in your kit so you have it. You can get them off of Amazon, but they're MC4 tools. It makes, if not, you're up there with 2 screwdrivers, right?
Or your fingers pinching them. I got fat hands, so
it's a
1 or 2 is fine, but when you have to do 10, it gets rough on your fingers.
And that's any solar. So if you have solar, I'd recommend having one of those.
So we're running a little long, guys. I want to make sure we go through this real quick. Obviously, electrical is probably the most critical point. We aren't going to have a lot of time visually right now, but you guys, after the class, we're here. So from your rooftop, you have a Solidex roof penetration box
Right.
that comes through your roof. You're going to hook all your string lines in there with your proper wire size and gauge and wire type. We can talk about wire types later. That is standard NM cable, which is your 12-2. It's all through your walls in your house. It will carry 20 amps of power. It's got a black, a white, and a ground. On that gauge, on that type, it is code compliant if we run that wire assembly red and white as our other conductor, because we have 240 volts. We do not need a neutral in that box coming down because there's only 3 wires, 2 conductors and a ground.
Yeah.
So that's how that gets into your attic. We get it out of your attic a couple different ways. Through a gable lead box, through a junction lead box, but it comes out through this box. Same wire, and then we take that wire down with a properly colored THHN or exterior rated wire. That's all on your plan set as well. Through the conduit, right here, some liquid tight. It comes into a combiner panel. This shows 1 string. If you have multiple strings, you'll have multiple wires and multiple breakers. And it goes over into a AC disconnect. So this is an AC disconnect, not your air conditioning disconnect, but a alternating current disconnect. Lots of confusion on that. This is called a knife blade. It just has a little knife blade, off on. That is for your power company. If your system is lower, sometimes you don't need it, but we put it out on every system just because it's a great, easy disconnect. It's a PV disconnect. It's a rapid shutdown point of disconnection. Again, it'll shut down. It tells you right here. And then it goes into your main panel here, and you can plug it in. We tell you where to put your breaker, what breaker size, where on how to interconnect.
Yep.
It matters if it's on the bottom of the bus bar, the top of the bus bar, in the middle of the bus bar. That's all specific to your house, how you interconnect. And it does matter. The inspector, 90% of the inspectors only care about this. They'll look and make sure no wires are hanging, but they really don't care about the rooftop. They care about this because this is what's critical. This is what's critical about feeding downstream and upstream.
One note from us. We do not supply this breaker right here. That's one of the very, very few things that we don't supply. And the reason is because there are so many options that you need. They're usually only $20 maybe.
Yeah, depending on the breaker size.
But we just recommend run to your local hardware store, Home Depot, whatever. Buy the one that's specific to your panel, and then you just pop it right in.
We want to be same brand, same type, same. So if you have an Eaton, you want an Eaton breaker, Square D breaker. If you can't find it, some are compliant and can go back and forth, but it depends on how particular your inspector is. So, but this is a 20 amp breaker for 20 amp string, flows all the way through. One other key point are labels. Everybody loves labels. You'll get a little sticker pack of labels. This is pretty critical. They need to be put on real similar to this layout. That's also shown in your permit pack. Tells you where your labels are, what box they go on, all that fun stuff.
This is handy for off-grid systems if you have it labeled that way. But once again, off-grid, it's not necessarily required, right?
But it's smart.
It's smart.
You have to think about the next person, right? Who's going to buy your house or who's going to buy the cabin later? Prep it out. Make sure that it's labeled correctly. Your kids, if you have to tell your kids or your wife, hey, go turn this breaker off or disconnect this, they know where they're going, right?
Yeah.
So that helps out quite a bit. They will be. You'll have a sticker. It's not on this one right here. The sticker that goes here or on your disconnect that'll tell you the voltage, the amperes, the watt, like that specific. Yep. Yeah. Some jurisdictions make us have the hard metal plate or plastic plates. They're engraved with all that information.
Yep.
Some have a directory where it says, I am here, and then your panels are here. So depends on that. There's some really, there's different placards or different things that we may have to get for your specific, and they get them, they do all that for you. So the next thing is turning it on. You got to wait till Rocky Mountain Power gives you the okay. You got to wait till your city says you're okay. So you got PTO, permission to operate. You've got the final inspection. You've got the activation on the AP systems or monitoring systems. Then you have the opportunity to look online. I can look online and see how much solar I'm producing. I've got a Solar Edge. I've got AP systems. and I'm installing a solar arc on my house this in the next week or two. So I've got those 3 systems. I also have a sense monitoring system that tells me every appliance that's pulling power and how much solar I'm producing on all those systems. So I know exactly how much wattage and power I'm using. I can look on like, oh, the wife woke up at 10:30. She put some stuff in the microwave. She probably cooked breakfast for the kids. I can see she turned on the stove. She made eggs or whatever. She's doing laundry, right? I got to keep her on task. So I have to make sure she's doing stuff, right? But yeah, that's why I'm still married. I didn't say happily, no. But so those kind of things, it's really good to have more data and information. I do that because sometimes I get free product, like the Sense was free. I put it on, tested it. I love it. I probably sold 30 or 40 of them. Quick, little easy install. It's a $300 item. You can do that with solar, without solar, but it's brilliant. It's kept our power bill down. People love to see it. They love one app, especially if you have multiple systems like I do. All the solar goes into that. Then I know everything. So
That product called?
it's called Sense Monitoring. Amazon, $250 without solar, 300 with solar, or something like that. And there's CT monitors. Just clip around your wires. So it's all self-learning. It takes about 30 to 60 days to learn your appliances, and so it's pretty cool. Yeah.
One item to note. Oh yeah, sorry, I skipped your question. Go ahead.
My question is, miner box.
Yeah.
Pull in multiple ways. As a port in, like, if the power goes out, could you put another breaker in there and have an outlet somewhere that you could, even if you turn off the solar, have an outlet that would be.
So on an off-grid system, yes, or even a string inverter system, potentially. When you have a grid-tied system, no, because of rapid shutdown compliance. These micros will not. So you have, think of it as like a water gate for an old trench or a canal. This micro will not open up and operate until it senses grid power. So it has to have 240 volts to sense grid power to operate. So when a grid goes down, it goes into rapid shutdown mode. When the grid comes back up, this goes and it goes through a 5-minute startup or cycle. Every grid-tied inverter does it. So for 300 seconds, it'll check the system and make sure the voltage is correct and the correct sine wave, and then reactivate. So when I go out service the system, I shut it down and recycle it. It takes 5 minutes for it to turn back on. So, yeah, good question.
Yep. And the last portion for DIY, when you're doing this, you want to be thinking of the future. And what I mean by that is when you're installing these microinverters on the roof, this is where the last part of your install comes through, is the monitoring that we're talking about. But it's how you get to know where that monitoring is. We call it a site map. You need to mark down the serial numbers of the inverters so that you know exactly where it is on your roof. So when you're monitoring, you can check that serial number and go specifically to those 2 panels, remove them, and inspect the one. I can't tell you how many times 6 months later we get a DIYer who says, oh, which panel is it? And we say, we don't know. We didn't get a site map. Or did you do your site map? No. Then the only option is to pull off every single panel and test your system.
So all you do that, you don't have to write down a 16-digit number.
No.
It's got stickers. So you map out Sharpie on a piece of cardboard, piece of plate, whatever you want, a napkin, whatever you want to do. But the cardboard works great because there's plenty of it on your package. You have these mounted. There's serial numbers on this 5 different places. This has 2 numbers here because it can do 2 panels. We usually just pull 1 sticker off, mark that panel. That's that first one in the row, then the next one, then the next one, the next one, right? We know exactly where that is. Then what do you guys do? You send it back to Solar Wholesale, and they map your system on the monitoring platform.
Yep.
And then they send you a login. I can log into mine. I know what panel's producing what. I know I've got a stovepipe or a tree there, or a gable or a penetration, and I know that that's why that's shaded, or that panel is working a little less. If all of them are working a little less, I need to get up there and spray them with some water, clean them. So they've tried to seriously make this super user friendly. So no, so you get a login. They actually have the master system, the master installer system. They're the ones certified. They just drop you in as a customer client, and then they give you a login for that, and then you can access that.
Yep.
There's
and
a
that
little,
way, someone like Teddy, if he
Yeah.
had to go out there and assist you, he uses our portal to get in there, and he has back-end access that you wouldn't necessarily have, so that we can provide that little higher servicing for you.
Yeah. And I can see voltage of panel. I can see power panel. I can see all the data in there, all the graphs. and I can go out there and be like, okay, I know it's that panel. I pull that panel up. I'm like, great, they mapped it correctly. There's so many times I go, great, I got to pull off 10 more panels because they didn't map it correctly, or it's upside down, or the northeast west isn't right. So stuff like that. Yeah.
About the location of the island, there is more area with more sun than the other one.
So
For example,
yeah,
one of the breakers, the main breaker is that sun.
yeah.
What
So
what is that working?
yeah, so that's a good question. A lot of the times, it doesn't matter where your main service panel is or where your electrical is. We can usually get wire over there. I can get wire anywhere. I can get wire through walls. I can get wire through attics anywhere. A lot of the times, all we do is get it into the attic. Once it's in the attic, we can get it pretty much anywhere inside your attic. Get it out to the eave structure or to end wall gable structure and punch it out, and then we run conduit from there. We typically try to get it to where it's only 8 to 10 feet of conduit on the outside of your house from wherever your eave is straight down to your box wall. But we first go south facing. South facing is 100% the best. Then east and west, there's pros and cons on both. Depends on where you're at, where there's trees, where there's shade. And I don't love putting anything on the north side. Every once in a while we have to. In the Utah market, it doesn't do you any benefit to put it on the north side. If you're farther south, closer to the equator, doesn't matter where you put it. Southern California, doesn't matter where you put it most of the time.
That box that you have there, doesn't become soffit.
Yep, by your soffit. We punch through the soffit a lot of time and get into the attic. Yep.
The wall that is next to the breaker, pretty,
Way far down. Yeah.
you cannot access.
No. Yeah. So once we punch out through the eave, rafters, or soffit, then we come out and then we can run it wherever. Yep.
Okay.
And we can get into more specific details, especially if you have photos of your house or you got your power bill. Forgot the word for a second. You got your power bill or you got specific questions. We can get into that.
Yep.
Do we have any online questions? Okay. Yes.
So repeat the question. So
The first question was if we have a mounting system for a overlapping seam metal roof. So there's several different attachments. There's some right here on this side.
hold on. Let me move this.
So this is just a corrugated metal. This is a lot of residential, a lot of commercial. These are called proteas. They go on any trapezoid, any flat stock. They have other mounting brackets go on a vertical seam, like an SL16 panel. There's a mounting equipment hardware for almost every type of roof except clay shingles, clay tile shingles. You do not want to get on clay shingles. You want a re-roof. And we work with amazing roofers. So if you do need a roof or your roof's 20 years old and you think you need a new roof, you can do a roof assessment and get that information. So that's a great question. Next. Great question. Contact a local electrician. I wouldn't have enough information to speculate on that one. So if you have any issues with digging before you dig, call 811.
Yep.
And make sure you are working with your jurisdiction. If you do have methane or wires or other utilities in the ground, and you're trenching with a ground mount, that's critical. Even in your own backyard, you've had the land for 100 years. You know there's nothing back there. Call before you dig. Because if you hit something and you don't call, it's your fault. If you do hit something after you call, it's not your fault. So.
So the question is, do you pair larger panels with smaller inverters for the clipping? Is that correct?
We can.
Yeah.
So we can pair it if that's what you want for degradation for lifetime systems, but we try to maximize the efficiency. So you may get a 410 watt panel and you can only get 380 out of your micro. But we also know that you're not going to be getting 410 watts. You may be able to get 360 or 380. So you're going to be at 100%. So we try to maximize and optimize that system or performance. So good question. So do you have your price point on the wattage?
My energy consultants do. The question was, what's an average DIY solar wholesale cost for a 5 kW system? Is this grid tied? I would imagine. If it was grid tied, so the smallest that we start with, just for efficiency for homeowners and then for us to package it all, the smallest that we'll do is 3.7 kW system. For a 5 kW system, Eric is pulling that up right now real quick. This would be our full package price. And for today, what we did not mention, we'll be sending out to you guys so you have it. But for attending this course in person and online, we will be doing a $500 discount for your purchase on your kit. That being said, sorry, give me just 1 second here.
Obviously, with size matters in solar, right? The smallest system's a 3.7. That's 10 modules at the 370s.
Yep.
If you go larger, you have a larger wattage disparity where you can increase decrease the cost of the overall system if it fits your system. So,
okay. Yeah, so a 5 kW system with if you did our full package, you'd be 11,900.
So 11.9.
5 kW.
And then with the 500 off, you'd be 11.4.
Yep.
I'm also for in person. Sorry, online unless you're in Utah and you can get a hold of me and contact me. That's all. Well, the only state we're physically installing right now. So anybody here in the class also will get a $500 off of my full install rate card, and I'll give you a card. It's got the little offer on it. And then if it's done if you guys do something this month, I think, well, what's today? The 20th?
Mm-hmm.
So even before the end of May, I'll double that to $1,000 off a full system. So, and I'm probably, it depends on the size of the system, but usually about 75 cents, depending on where we're at per watt. So on a 5K, it would be less than $5,000 for a full install.
Come do it.
So, and that's a 1 day done. If you purchase today, you'd be done in 25 to 30 days, fully on grid installed. So, and there's plenty of times where you guys buy a package, you put it in the garage, and then your wife calls me and says, "Come get this on 6 months later," because we all think we have enough time, and it's been done plenty of times. So, don't feel ashamed if that's something you want to do.
What about, for example, how easy is it to take the shingles after?
It's not that fun.
No.
Because you're going to be paying. You're
So
going to pay somebody like me.
The question is, how easy is it to replace the shingles after you install solar?
It's not that fun. The roofing company is going to call me, or you're going to take it back off and reinstall. It's a secondary install. It costs me just as much to send my guys out to pull off and reinstall, and it almost costs me double because they have to pull it off, wait for the roofing company for 2 weeks, go back. So I'm making 2 trips to your house. So if you do need a roof, get a roof at the same time, in the same loan, in the same process, because you get ITC credits up to 30% if you have that tax liability. So that's a huge government benefit that you can claim off your taxes. So 10 years is fine. If you're hitting 25, 30 years old, or you've got wind or damage, there's other issues, but 10 years old, perfect, fine. Yeah.
You have another one, Stacy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the question is, they're concerned about roof penetration and leaking, right? You hire me, I guarantee it's not going to leak for a year. And you're going to find a leak over that first year anyways, if there is a leak, especially in our Utah winters. If you're worried and concerned about a leak, mention that when you purchase a product, because we will give you the deck mounts. Then there's no penetration except where that screw goes through and through that butylene. If you're concerned about moving your roof or having the single penetration with the flashing, it can be done, but it could leak potentially. But if you do it right and you follow the video, you'll do it.
So this is actually designed to sit on top of here, so it's kind of backwards. Obviously, you wouldn't have your shingles catching water, but as you can see here, you do have 4 holes, right? If you go with if you go with a flashing method, this flashing would cover all those holes. So that you can see right here, that's a good 2.5, 3-inch group. This flashing covers that. And when Teddy says you still use some sealant on this, typically what you'll do is you would do a U shape around your hole to make sure it's sealed nice and tight. Slide this sucker in, put your lag bolt right through, and now you've just fully sealed these holes. You don't have to do a full circle because water typically doesn't climb up when it's going downhill. So that would just do a U shape right around it, and that water would never get inside. So you could make a hole about probably a fist size right here, and your flashing would still cover it. Your deck mount's a little different, but the deck mount you're going to screw and it's going to seal itself as it goes in.
And there's less concern about it leaking. The cool thing about partnering or providing these higher end like snap and rack and AP systems, they have professionally done videos exactly how to walk through, how to put pre-drill, flash, do that. We are duplicating some of those things, but there's no sense for us to do it if the company's already got it. So we will send links to that. We'll share resources and we'll help you find those. So great question. So
you good?
My mom, thanks, Mom.
Yeah. And in the winter time, if you guys need a Santa, I always got to throw this out. He makes the best Santa, just so you know. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
awesome.
I just want to give a huge shout out. Thank you guys so much. Based on the feedback from online and after the show, when talking with you guys, if you have just a few moments, we would like to continue doing this course and dive more in specific. And because today was an overall, right? If you have questions about how to do a roof mount, we could spend an hour doing just the roof, have a larger display. If you want some electrical is hard because
it's specific to your house.
Specific to your
this
house.
is really general.
Yep.
But if you bring a photo or you have a photo of what you have, we can figure it out real quick.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. We did run long. For those of you who have a moment, I'd love for you to come up here. We can show you how to mount a panel. If you have questions, get your hands on it real quick. If you're interested on an off-grid system, we can walk inside here. We have a full off-grid operating right now. So
we can plug the car in as well. Show that how that works and reacts. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Hey, online, thanks so much for attending, guys. We really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to hearing some feedback.